Hey everyone, and welcome to our webinar series on helpful resources for international students. My name is Reece, and I'm a recent graduate from Lewis University. I did my master's in aviation transportation, and I'm currently working as a faculty in the university.
And I'm Gerard Ortiz. I'm an international student from the Philippines. I'm an alum at Lewis University as well. So I did both my bachelor's and my master's at Lewis. And I previously worked at the International Student Services as a graduate assistant as well. All right. So before we start, basically what we'll tackle in this presentation are the essential documents that you'll need as an international student to get around. All right. So that would be your driver's license, your social security number, and the bank account, of course. All right. So starting with the driver's license, there's two types, and we'll start with the temporary visitor's driver's license, or most commonly known as the TVDL. So the TVDL is basically for non-citizens who are lawfully admitted to the United States. You need to be authorized to stay in the US for at least 1 year. And during your time of application, you need to have at least 6 months of remaining authorized stay. You have to be residing in Illinois. And by extension, that means all the requirements that we will be talking about is for the state of Illinois. Also, you have to be ineligible for a social security number, or SSN. So again, basically a TVDL is for people who do not have a social security number. All right. So what are the requirements for a TVDL? So the requirements are basically your most recent valid I-20, your passport and visa, your most recent I-94, which you can just click on this link over here, and you just have to fill out the form, and then you'll be able to get your most recent I-94. Or you can just do a quick Google search, just type in most recent I-94, and you should be able to find the .gov website. And then you need the denial letter. So basically, this is issued by the Social Security Administration that basically indicates that you are not eligible to have a Social Security number. Okay, and then there's the fee, which is $30 or $5 for ages 18 to 20 years old. And then you'll need your proof of address. So for the proof of address, if you live on campus, then you can basically ask for one of these from the Office of Residence Life. Or if you live off campus, there are acceptable documents, and some of those would be your lease agreement if you live in an apartment, or a rented home, your utility bill, so that's the electricity or gas bill, whichever works, and then a bank statement if you already have one. All right, so what are the steps for applying for a temporary visitor's driver's license? So first and foremost, you want to call ahead to the Department of Motor Vehicles, or the DMV, and just make sure that they accept applications for the TVDL, because not all of these facilities do accept those applications. And then number two, just make sure your I-20 is valid and recent. And then three, you need to request the letter of denial, the letter of ineligibility from the Social Security Office. Again, you'll ask that from the Social Security Office and not from the International Student Services Office. Okay, the next is then you need to obtain the acceptable documents that prove your current address in Illinois. Again, we just talked about either getting one from, if you live on campus, you can get one from the Office of Residence Life, or the valid documents if you live off campus. And then lastly, just be prepared for your vision test, your written test, and your road test, because you don't want to show up there not prepared and then just end up wasting your time. So important note is that this goes for the regular driver's license as well, that you will need to supply your own vehicle for the road test, because the DMV, or the Department of Motor Vehicles, will not be able to supply you with a vehicle for your road test. All right, Reece?
So taking all the information that Gerard has mentioned about the TVDL license, we can kind of move on to students that might be eligible or have the ability of getting a normal Illinois driver's license. Now, the first thing, as it mentions over here, is that these are for individuals that already have a social security number that has been issued to them. That is kind of one of the main prerequisites. In addition to that, students need to have a total program length listed on their I-20 as at least 1 year. In addition to that, when the student is applying for their driver's license, they need to have a minimum of 6 months remaining on their program at the time of application. If students are applying between the ages of 18 and 20, they would need to successfully complete a 6-hour adult driver program course through a certified training provider.
Yes, and just to add on to that, there are actually online options for that. So if you don't have the capability to go to an actual facility to take exams or the education course, then you can most definitely do it online as well. That's pretty important as international students to have that flexibility.
So if you're one of the students that have met one of those requirement criteria and you are willing to apply for an Illinois state driver's license, the documentation that is required is as follows. The first thing is your social security number. That's one of the most important documents. You'd also require your most recent I-20. You require a passport as well as the F1 student visa. Remember, if you might have a second passport that has expired, but the visa is in that passport, bring it along with you so you have proof that you have the F1 student visa. In addition to that, like Gerard said, you need a most recent I-94 form. The easiest way you can access that is via the link that is provided over here. Again, the applications fees remain the same for as the TVDL. For normal applicants, it's $30. If you are between the ages of 18 and 20, it's only $5. And once again, for the proof of address, if you are a student that is living on campus, you can receive a letter from the Office of Residence Life that will act as your proof of residence. If you're living off campus, there are a multitude of acceptable documents that can be used. Some of them are listed over here, such as your lease agreement, any of the utility bills that you might have, a bank statement, or even a paycheck.
Right. And just to add on to this again, I forgot, I should have made a disclaimer earlier that the fees that we're talking about are the fees at the time when we made this presentation. So just make sure that you actually go to the website and check that these are still accurate, because they may have changed. Just making sure.
Now that we've gone through the criteria, the requirements, we can now look at the steps that are required in order to actually get your driver's license. So the first thing is, once again, apply in person at your DMV. Now, the time that Gerard and I are shooting this video, we're still within COVID. As a result of that, it's no longer how it used to be that you can just go to the DMV and apply for it on the day itself. You actually need to schedule an appointment. So you can utilize the Secretary of State Facility Finder in order to find whichever DMVs firstly issue driver's licenses. And then from there on out, you can actually schedule an appointment so that you can go over there and get your license done. Once you've scheduled an appointment, ensure that you have a valid I-20. It's your most recent I-20 that indicates all your information correctly. The third thing is to obtain all the acceptable documentation that was discussed about on the previous slide, as well as, most importantly, your residential proof documentation that shows that you are a current resider in the state of Illinois. Once you've accumulated all these documentation, you can also prepare for your vision, your written, as well as your road test. You will once again need to supply your own vehicle during the driving test itself. It is not provided to you by the DMV.
Yep. All right, and then now let's move on to the social security number. And this is actually one of the most important documents that you will probably receive, because this will enable you to apply for jobs. It makes a lot of things easier. All right, so what are the prerequisites of qualifying for a social security number? So first, one is to have an offer or have been hired for an on-campus or off-campus job, either via CPT or OPT, or you need to have an I-20 with a CPT authorization. Again, that's working off campus. Or the third is basically an employment authorization document or your EAD, along with your I-20 with the OPT authorization. So this is via OPT. All right, and just as an important disclaimer before we go through, before you actually pay a visit to the International Student Services Office to obtain your support or authorization letter, which we'll talk about later on in the presentation, is to make sure that you actually obtain the hire letter or offer letter from your hiring manager or director, because they are the ones who are hiring you. All right, so moving on from there, what are the steps for applying for a social security number? So the first step is to submit your offer letter to the International Student Services Office, and then you'll be issued the authorization letter that we just mentioned earlier. And then the second step is to like Reece said, at the time that we shot this, the procedures are quite different this time. So you'll need to actually make an appointment. So call the nearest Social Security office and make sure that you actually schedule and confirm an appointment. And then the last step is to make sure that you have all the necessary documents needed before applying, because it's very important. You don't want to show up to your appointment with missing documents and you'll end up having to repeat the whole process, because it may take some time in order to get an appointment scheduled. All right. So that being said, what are the requirements for applying for a social security number? So again, just like the other requirements that me and Reece mentioned earlier with the previous documentations, you'll need your most recent I-20, your most recent I-94, which you can click on the previous links from the previous documentations that we talked about, your passport and visa, your school ID or state ID. If you have a driver's license, that also works. And then your social security authorization letter from the International Student Services Office. All right. So that is the letter that is provided by the DSO. It's the supplement that you will need. And then your hire or offer letter, which will come from your hiring director. And again, not from our office, but from the department that is, or whoever your hiring manager. Let's put it that way. And then lastly, your proof of address. So again, like we talked about earlier, if you live on campus, then you can obtain one from the Office of Residence Life. Or if you live off campus, then the acceptable documents would be the lease agreement, utility bill, or the bank statement. All right, I'll let Reece take over.
So one of the final slides that we'll be talking about today is how to open a bank account.
Sorry.
That's okay. Alrighty. Are we on the right slide, Gerard?
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Sorry, double click.
That's okay. So when looking at a bank account, there are a multitude of different bank accounts that you can choose from within the United States of America. As an international student, we kind of urge you to choose a bank account that is nearby. That is something that's very accessible to you. Now, you might find a multitude of different banks, but you need to keep in mind the ones that have multiple branches in different areas in case you need to access it whenever you require. As a result of that constraint, we often tend to recommend Chase Bank, Bank of America, First Midwest, as well as BMO Harris, primarily due to the fact that they have multiple branches in different suburbs and areas across the state of Illinois. So it's very accessible for you. Again, this is based on your preference, but these are just some suggestions that we like to give to our international students so they can kind of choose which one works for them. So again, like all the documents we've spoken so far, there are certain requirements and additional sorts of information that you need to bring when applying. For a bank account, the first thing that you require is your passport, as well as your F1 student visa. Again, your most recent I-20 that has been issued by the university. The third point is very important. It's the money that you need to deposit to actually open the account. Now, this varies depending on your bank. So depending on which bank you choose, it would be advisable for you to call up the bank and find out what their minimum deposit fee is for the account, just so that you have that money in cash available to deposit on the day when you start your account. The fourth thing is a social security number. If by this point of time you already have one, you would also require some sort of ID, so a school ID issued by the university works, or even a state ID if you have one. Finally, your proof of address. If you're living on campus, that letter of proof of address can be given by the Office of Residence Life. If you are living off campus, then this can be proven by a multitude of documents as we've given over here, such as your lease agreement, any form of utility bills, or even a paycheck if you have one listed at this particular address. Yeah, right.
No, so basically, summarizing, and this goes for not just for the bank accounts, but this goes for all the the topics that we covered earlier. So basically, you want to make sure the tips. You basically want to make sure that you call up the facilities that you're trying to visit and not just show up at the facility, because like we said, procedures are kind of different, and you actually need to make an appointments for some of them. So without an appointment, without scheduling an appointment, you probably won't even be able to, process your documents or even step foot in the facility. And then just make sure that you have all the required documents. And if you need additional help with this one, you're always more than welcome to visit the office and then, ask some clarification, and then just be punctual on your appointments. If you miss your appointment, then you'll have to reschedule for another one. Then Reece, do you have anything to add on to this?
Again, like you said, Gerard, just make sure that all the documents that you're bringing are appropriate, that they're the most recent updated documents. If you would like help prior to going to your appointment, like Gerard said, you're more than welcome to come to our office, get some help from some of our student employees or even the GA if they're available, and they can scrutinize your documents to make sure everything is fine. Again, like Gerard said, because appointments have been made for some of these application processes, they're very strict about you being there on time. And if you aren't there on time, then they probably will not allow you to get in. And you'd have to reschedule it for another day. And just seeing how busy a bureaucratic process can be, you could either get rescheduled for the next day, or you might even have to do it 2 or 3 weeks down the line. So just be on time as best as you possibly can.
Yeah, so lots of planning, plan ahead. All right, and if you need any further information in this, again, these are all available at the Lewis University website. So that's www.lewisu.edu/student services. So all the information that we talked about and any further information not included in this presentation, you'll be able to find in there. All right, again, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Reece, for hosting as well. And good luck with everything, everyone.
Yeah. I hope you have a wonderful time with Lewis, guys. Thanks.